horror movie this year. It's scary. It's about this big Japanese monster that comes and devours Hollywood. Just devours it. No one survives. No one can stop it. No one. The monster even has a scary name. It's called Sony. Oh! Oh! Seriously, though, this has also been a tragic year for the horror world because we lost one of our biggest and brightest stars. Someone who was senselessly and brutally taken from us. So on behalf of the Horror Hall of Fame, please join me now in paying our last respects to the memory of Mr. Freddy Krueger!
Every weekend.
Yeah. You know, I guess this was also a very good year because there's no more communism, there's no more war. Pee Wee Herman got, of course, the justice he deserved. And now no more Freddy movies. So thanks everyone and good night.
Now, I know you've got to be wondering how we stab people with sharp instruments in Hollywood. Well, we've come up with a technique that's a snap. Take a look at this. It's really just a phony screwdriver. All you've got to do is pick up a couple of brass tubes from your local hobby shop. While you're at it, pick up a couple of real screwdrivers. Now, make sure that one tube slides neatly into the other one. Next, attach the larger tube to a handle. Then slip in a spring. And slide the smaller tube in. There you go. Now, if you really want to have some fun, you can fill it with fake blood. That way you get a nice oozing wound when you pull the screwdriver out. With one of these babies, you can stab yourself all day long. And remember, always make sure you use the phony screwdriver when you stab yourself.
I'm going to miss my old friend, Freddy Krueger. I should have said a few words at his funeral, but I just didn't have the guts. The Horror Hall of Fame continues with lots more shocks and surprises. Will you be back? Of course you will.
How do you salute a producer-director who has more than 200 movies to his credit and single-handedly helped establish more stars and directors than anyone else? Well, we didn't know, so we called 911 for help, and they sent over their very best. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the star of Rescue 911 and the captain of the Starship Enterprise, Mr. William Shatner.
Thank you very much. 1961, that was a long time ago. Our next honoree gave me one of my first motion picture roles. The film was called The Intruder. And although it wasn't a box office success at the time, today you can pick up a TV guide, turn to any day of the week, and there on that page, you still won't find The Intruder. But you will find some all-time horror classics, produced and directed by our next inductee to the Horror Hall of Fame, Roger Corman.
You are about to enjoy an experience in extreme terror.
I'm not certain exactly what led me to make horror films.
From worlds beyond comes a weird and wanton intelligence.
My conscious mind tells me I'm an adult human being and I'm not afraid of anything.
Mysterious creatures thirsting for lovers' blood.
My unconscious mind tells me there's a lot to be afraid of.
Roger Corman has been called the greatest independent filmmaker in Hollywood history. And though he may not understand his taste for terror, he understood early on that with a little money and lots of ingenuity, he could film his fears for fun and profit.
I started in the motion picture business as a messenger at 20th Century Fox, worked my way up to the story department, then wrote and sold a story of my own, went along as associate producer for no salary, but I wanted the credit.
Roger soon decided he could do a better job making movies himself. So he raised $12,000 and produced Monster from the Ocean Floor, shot in just 6 days. The movie made $100,000 at the box office, and its success caught the attention of Jim Nicholson and Sam Arkoff, whose company went on to become American International Pictures.
I thought it had a commercial ring to it. The title, the theme, wasn't much of a picture as such, but there were obvious qualities, particularly the fact that not too much money had been spent on it.
Next, Roger tried his hand at directing and launched his first wave of science fiction quickies.
The Day the World Ended, Not of This Earth, and a great early winter, Attack of the Crab Monsters. As fast as I could make my films, I would get my costs back and I could continue shooting and then wait for the profits. And the great thing about American International was that there were almost always profits.
The profits were rarely invested in convincing special effects, though. The Beast with a Million Eyes was really just a tea kettle with some holes punched in it. And the creature from the haunted sea would make the Cookie Monster look menacing.
Fire! Fall back!
The least threatening monster I ever ran from was what I called the big carrot. Somebody called it the cucumber. And what was it? It conquered the world. It looked like a big ice cream cone upside down with fringe on the bottom and some eyes, horrible eyes.
Corman also created storylines from headlines. When the Russians launched Sputnik, Corman countered with War of the Satellites. When bee pollen became the rage, Roger arranged his own sting operation. That hatched The Wasp Woman. Eventually, Roger played horror for humor. The result was a macabre comedy that became a Corman classic.
Feed me! Oh, take it easy, Dracula. What do you think I'm carrying here, my dirty laundry?
The Little Shop of Horrors is the gory story of a boy and his bloodthirsty pet plant. The movie eventually blossomed into an off-Broadway musical and a big-screen remake. But the original also featured the cameo appearance of a pain-loving dental patient played by Jack Nicholson.
No Novocaine. It dulls the senses.
This is gonna hurt you more than it is me.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Oh, my God, don't stop now!
What is the meaning of this?
In 1960, American International took a gamble and allowed Corman more time and money to make his first full-color, widescreen scare show. The Fall of the House of Usher was their biggest hit to date, and it led to a series of films loosely based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe. The Pit and the Pendulum, Tales of Terror, The Haunted Palace, The Mask of the Red Death, and The Tomb of Ligeia relied on gloomy, gothic settings, moody musical scores, and a star who became the suave, self-obsessed anti-hero of horror, Vincent Price.
I can hear the scratch of rat claws within the stone wall.
People are always asking me, did it worry you that you were stuck in that kind of film? I really wasn't, because the parts were all so different. And they made my name in film. I'm very grateful to Roger for that, for those pictures.
Get out of my sight.
In 1963, Corman directed what some critics consider to be his masterpiece, X, The Man with X-Ray Eyes. Stephen King has called it one of the most interesting and offbeat little horror movies ever made. And while Ray Milland gets a glimpse of eternity, it's con man Don Rickles who can only see dollar signs.
You're out of your mind.
But you can look right through a guy and see what's wrong with him, can't you? You said you wanted money, didn't you?
He gave him great advice, Roger Corman. He always said to me, why do you want money? That was a big problem when you did those pictures with Roger Corman. You didn't get money. You got an 8x10 glossy of him.
When Roger quit directing to form New World Pictures in 1970, he continued his personal tradition of trying new talent. More than anyone in Hollywood, Corman is credited with giving big breaks to actors like Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, Peter Fonda, and Dennis Hopper, and directors Francis Ford Coppola and Martin Scorsese. When Gremlins director Joe Dante got the media assignment to direct Piranha, he benefited from Corman's counsel.
The best piece of horror advice Roger ever gave to me was to sit down a lot on the set. He said that if you don't sit down, movie making will be a horror, and he was right. Unfortunately, he never provided any chairs.
Now, as the head of Concord New Horizons, Roger's still making movies and providing a proving ground for the talent of tomorrow.
It's something Roger takes a great deal of pride in, and he should. And I wish there were more Roger Cormans out there, but I guess someone as unique as Roger, it's hard to duplicate.
In 1991, Roger broke new ground by getting his own star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. And he received one of the movie world's rarest honors, top billing in a film that marked his return to directing, Roger Corman's Frankenstein Unbound.
I think Roger should be inducted into the Horror Hall of Fame because of his contributions to this business. He is an institution.
I know that there are directors who have made a single good horror picture. I don't know anybody in that field who's made as many good ones.
Those pictures have lasted a long time now. They are always on television. They are always being shown in theaters, which is a proof that they were well made.
It's very hard to imagine what the impact of those pictures was at the time, but they were really trendsetters. Congratulations, Roger. You truly do deserve to be in the Horror Hall of Fame. Any director who's ever worked for you could attest to that. Roger, thank you for the opportunity to direct. I continue to love the job, and there isn't a week that goes by that I don't use something that you talked about and taught me, or tell a really great anecdote about you. Thank you for all those things, and congratulations tonight.
Because I was one of the many people who Roger helped out along the way, it gives me great pleasure to present this award to my good friend, Roger Corman.
Thank you, Horror Hall of Fame, not only for making this a night I'll always remember, but for giving recognition to my favorite genre and the respect it deserves. And for all you horror fans out there, I thank you also for letting us into your unconscious and screw you up forever.
Hollywood have to keep in shape. So I developed my own special workout. No gain, all pain. Coming up next, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. The first time I saw her, she stole my heart. Now I finally got it back. Don't go away if you know what's bad for you.
Promotional consideration for the Horror Hall of Fame provided by the Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood will be right back.
Here to present a special award, please welcome the horror industry's top spookswoman, Elvira!
You can't talk about horror movies without mentioning the 4 M's. Monsters, madmen, mutants, and mummies. And you can't mention the 4 M's without talking about the studio that brought them to life, even after death. I am talking about the birthplace of the movie's classic monsters, Universal Studios. Universal Pictures founder and president Carl Laemmle produced his first horror hit back in 1923 when Lon Chaney climbed the backlot bell tower as Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Chaney was soon shocking audiences in another Universal super production as the enigmatic Eric, better known to silent movie fans as the Phantom of the Opera.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
Dracula, the studio's first all-talking, all-stalking monster, was Universal's big hit of 1931. And Frankenstein followed in its footsteps to become a box office bonanza 10 months later. By the time the studio took the wraps off The Mummy and Frankenstein fashioned a bride for his creature, Universal had become known as Hollywood's undisputed home of horror. In 1941, a new face and an old name were added to Universal's terror team when Lon Chaney Jr. starred as the moonstruck monster in The Wolfman. In the 50s, the cars had fins, so the monsters grew gills, and the creature from the Black Lagoon made a big splash and became one of Universal's most popular late model monsters. From the birds to Jaws. to Chucky's latest terror tantrum, Universal has been on the cutting edge of horror for almost 75 years, and we have every reason to believe the future will be just as frightening. Now, to accept this special award is the niece of Universal Studios founder Carl Laemmle. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Carla Laemmle.
I'm very, very proud to be here this evening to accept this prestigious award on behalf of my uncle, Carl Laemmle. On behalf of the entire Laemmle family, I wish to thank the Board of Directors of the Horror Hall of Fame for this wonderful tribute and honor. Thank you very, very much.
The horror really hits home when alien invaders find themselves in L.A. with a few days to kill. Our next nominated film, Predator 2.
Backing up. It's moving away from you.
He sees them, Garber. Your boys have been made.
Sir, it's circling around behind him.
Get them out, Garber. They're walking to a trap. Get them out! That Keys. He's right behind you. Third floor structure. Right there. Who is this? Clear the line. He sees the damn light. Turn him off. Turn him off.
Moving down on your position from the right.
Garber, where is he? I can't see him. He's right there. He's right there. Damn it, where is he? Oh, give me a coordinate. Where is he?
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. You don't need state-of-the-art equipment or expensive materials to pull off an impressive special effect. There are a lot of things you can do right at home with your own video camera. For our next trick, we'll need a mirror. What do you think of this one, kids? This is a good one.
Whee!
All you need for this is a big mirror and a video camera hooked up to a TV set. The camera should be placed at a slightly inward angle toward the mirror, and the mirror should be perpendicular to your face. Put your face halfway behind the mirror to start off like this. The closer you put your face, the better you'll look. It helps get rid of the line. Just use your TV set to help guide you along. And if you like this one, wait till you see the next one. Hi, Linnea. This is one of my favorite tricks, forced perspective. And it's something you can have a lot of fun with at home. All you need is a wide open space and a little imagination. See how easy that is? All we did was raise and lower the camera until this tabletop lined up with the one I was standing on about 20 feet back there. It's the oldest trick in the book. It's a cinch. With special effects, the possibilities are endless. Have you ever wondered how to drop a 10-ton safe on someone's head?
Put yourself on me, you guys.
Oh, this is such an exciting night. All the biggest names in the business are here. I guess you could say it's like the night of 100 scars. Coming up next, a tribute to the movie that pigeonholed Alfred Hitchcock. Now, you're not thinking of departing, are you? Perish the thought. Fancy.
game? Nightmare, the game hosted by a video.
I'm the gatekeeper!
To win, you must stop it.
Roll the dice!
The video board game Nightmare. The gatekeeper talks to you.
Whose turn is it next?
And you must answer him.
Answer me! Yes, my gatekeeper. Go for it!
Nightmare, a race against time for 3 to 6 very game players.
Let's party!
If E.T. was kid stuff, it certainly wasn't child's play. But if E.T. and Chucky ever do square off, our next two presenters definitely deserve ringside seats. Please welcome the star of E.T., D. Wallace Stone, an Academy Award nominee, the voice of Child Plays Chucky, Mr. Brad Dourif.
Can't believe I actually didn't follow 3 kids out here. After Psycho, moviegoers couldn't imagine how Alfred Hitchcock could scare them next.
What they didn't know what was waiting in the wings.
Our 5th inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, The Birds.
How do you do? My name is Alfred Hitchcock, and I would like to tell you about my forthcoming lecture. It is about the birds and their age-long relationship with man.
In 1963, Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, became a master of horror. And the rest of us, well, we never looked at our fine feathered friends in quite the same way.
I think the Birds was way ahead of its time. And to think of what they did with special effects in 1961 and 1962 to really pull this film off.
It was the fall of 1960, and Hitchcock had just released Psycho, a film that was breaking box office records. But instead of basking in its glory, Hitchcock was out searching for his next project. He found it in a short story called The Birds, about a farmer and his family mysteriously attacked by murderous birds. He called art director Robert Boyle to see if the birds could be captured on film.
I think in most respects, The Birds is the most complicated film I've ever worked on.
In the 60s, special effects were light years away from Star Wars and Terminator. Hitchcock had few choices, and each one had its problems. He could use opticals to superimpose the birds over a scene, but that was tedious and expensive. Mechanical birds were expensive and unrealistic. And real birds, thousands of birds, were hard to come by and difficult to work with. Hitchcock decided to use all 3.
I said to Hitch, from minute 1, I said, how far can I go? And he said, you write whatever you want to write, and I'll get it on the screen.
But The Birds turned out to be Hitchcock's greatest challenge. With 412 laborious special effects shots and 40 pens full of birds that didn't take direction very well, the man who always had a plan was basically flying on a wing and a prayer.
We couldn't plan the birds. I mean, he had a plan of sorts, obviously, but we had to be guided by what was available, what was possible. There were times when, ideas could be mooted, but, just out of the question. We couldn't get the birds to do the things. So he was shifting ground all the time, which was unusual for him because it was an unusual picture for him.
Hitchcock wanted only one thing from the birds: sheer horror. That's why the birds were his main concern, and why he decided they had to be the stars. So he gave the most sought-after parts in Hollywood to newcomers. Tippi Hedren, whom he had spotted in a commercial on the Today Show, Suzanne Plachette, Rod Taylor, and Veronica Cartwright. Jessica Tandy was the only seasoned actress in the lot.
As Hitch put it to me, he said, there are only two stars in this movie, Evan, the birds and me. That was it. And that's all he wanted to do was this birds attacking people for no apparent reason. We never once tried to explain it in the movie, you know, why it was happening. And that was a deliberate, creative decision.
Hitchcock would only go so far. He hoped his audience's imaginations would take them the rest of the way. But The Birds was a big departure for Hitchcock. And there were times when even Hitch felt a little cagey about his undertaking.
I can remember on one occasion at Bodega Bay, he turned around and apropos of nothing, said to me suddenly, you know, we're not making a science fiction movie, Al. And I thought, well, you know, who the hell said we were? And I said to him, well, what genre are we in, Hitch? And he didn't say a word. He just walked away.
Horror. Pure horror. That's what he was after. Even if it meant cast and crew had to suffer long hours and dangerous scenes.
I had been told that this scene was going to be used with mechanical birds because it would be very dangerous. And just before we started filming, the assistant director came into the room and he said, and he couldn't look at me. He looked at the ceiling and the walls and the floor. I said, what's the matter with you? And Jim Brown said, the mechanical birds don't work. We have to use real ones. And out the door he went. Well, I just was stunned. There were two prop men with huge cartons with ravens and seagulls, which they alternately started hurling at me. It took us a complete week to do this scene, and it became more horrendous and more exhausting as the week went by. At one point, one of the birds who was sitting on my shoulder decided to jump and, you know, came very close to my eye, and I just got all the birds off. This was Friday afternoon. And I got all of the birds off of me and started to cry, and that was the end of the filming.
I remember being frightened of this big seagull that they were going to throw at me. So I decided that I would go over and speak to Mr. Hitchcock. Now, I was about 8 years old, rather small. He was very big. And I went up to him, rather frightened, and I said, Mr. Hitchcock, I'm a little bit scared of this bird. I'm afraid it might kill me in this scene. And he looked down at me, and he said, don't worry, my dear, it's your last scene in the picture anyway.
You'd go home at night, and it was like you'd never noticed so many crows sitting on your front lawn before. And all of a sudden you go, why are there so many birds?
The Birds was truly ahead of its time. But then Hitchcock was always one step ahead, trying things that others didn't dare, creating classics like The Birds that continue to horrify audiences everywhere.
It is truly a horror film. I mean, of the first caliber. Very, very sophisticated people have said to me that this film has really frightened them.
It does leave a lot to your imagination. I think what's scary about the whole thing is the fact that it's something that you see every day.
Oh! Now, why would he do that? Most peculiar. What on earth?
They're coming! They're coming!
And now we'd like you to meet an actress who as a child was directed by Alfred Hitchcock and as an adult was manipulated by J.R. Ewing.
Please welcome Morgan Brittany.
Thank you very much. It was my great pleasure to work with Alfred Hitchcock in The Birds. Now to accept the award, it's also a great pleasure to introduce to you the star of The Birds, Miss Tippi Hedren.
Thank you for honoring the birds. You know, it doesn't take a secret agent to appreciate the vision of Alfred Hitchcock. And there isn't a shadow of a doubt that he was one of our greatest directors. And before this lady vanishes tonight, let me say I applaud your decision to honor Mr. Hitchcock and this film. Born under Capricorn, I am lucky and grateful to be a part of The Birds. I am very proud. It's a timeless classic. And how do I know? A little birdie told me. Thank you. Thank you.
Tippi Hedren was wonderful in The Birds, but I think her co-star should have been Gregory Peck. Coming up next, the moment everyone has been waiting for. No, not the end of the show. The winner of the best horror film of the year. But first, something really foul. Commercials!
The Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood will continue after this.
The best horror film of the year is brought to you by Nightmare, the video board game with atmosphere.
When a man's mind is pushed to the edge of reality, audiences are pushed to the edge of their seats. In our fifth and final nominee for Best Horror Film of the Year, Jacob's Ladder. Our next presenter is a man whose career is so remarkable, it's frightening. I take that back. His career is so frightening, it's remarkable. No matter how you say it, he's a legendary star and one of the first inductees into the Horror Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, I take great pleasure in introducing the Merchant of Menace, Mr. Vincent Price.
Thank you. The 5 nominees for Best Horror Film of the Year are Misery, Child's Play 2, The Silence of the Lambs, Predator 2, Jacob's Ladder. And the winner is, I'm going to give you that, darling. Thank you. Silence of the Lambs. Congratulations. Accepting for Silence of the Lambs is the executive producer, Gary Getzman. $2 million. Thank you.
I need about 50 of these, I think. We always thought we were making a romantic comedy. I'm kind of surprised at this award. I don't know. Anyway, on behalf of Jonathan Demme and all the wonderful and creative people involved with making Silence of the Lambs, we thank you very much. Thank you.
Stay tuned for more of the Horror Hall of Fame from Universal Studios Hollywood.
From Universal Studios Florida, secrets from the Horror Hall of Fame, brought to you by Nightmare.
Bela Lugosi's cape cloaked a secret he took to his grave. I'll tell you more after this. Bela Lugosi was truly haunted by his most famous role, Dracula. He always wanted to be buried wearing his famous cape and ring. On August 16th, 1956, his final wish was granted. I'm Robert Englund from the Horror Hall of Fame.
Congratulations to all of tonight's inductees. And a special thanks to my good friend who rose for the occasion, the Crypt Keeper.
Thanks, Robert. It's really been a night to dismember. See you on Tales from the Crypt, my little hauntlings. Nighty-night, boys and ghouls.
Thanks for watching. And for all you Freddy fans, I have a special announcement to make. Next year, actually, I will be back to host the Horror Hall of Fame, Part 3!
The Horror Hall of Fame has been brought to you by Nightmare, the video board game with atmosphere, and by New Blade Plug-ins Nightlight, freshness in a whole new light. It keeps on freshening with 30-day refill.
Air transportation provided by U.S. Air, the official airline of the Horror Hall of Fame. U.S. Air begins with you. Guests of the Horror Hall of Fame stay at the Universal City Hilton and Towers. Sleep comfortably close to the stars at the Universal City Hilton and Towers. Preferred stock, the extra smooth cologne for an extra special man. A distinctive gift from the House of Stetson. LeFleur, the captivating gift collection of personal and home fragrance items inspired by the turn of the century. LeFleur, somewhere inside, romance blossoms.